Hey guys, Andrew Davidson here, and welcome back to another As Per My Ability video. If you like what we do here at As Per My Ability, if you like our videos, if you like our content, if you like board games in general, please do us a favor, comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff. We appreciate everything that you guys do to help us grow. And on that note, make sure that you hit the bell so you get notifications when we post new videos. Because I've heard that if you hit the bell, you get 7 years good luck. But you'll never know unless if you hit that bell, right? Meow. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's good to see all of you again. I'm currently shooting this video on Mother's Day, on a Sunday, Mother's Day, hence why I'm kind of dressed like a Mormon. Happy Mother's Day, or happy, I guess it's called birthing day now. So happy birthing day to all you birthing persons out there, or happy Mother's Day, whatever you want to call it. Although I know it's a moot point at this point because I schedule my videos out quite a bit ahead of time, so Mother's Day is probably way in the rearview mirror by the time that you all get to see this video. But regardless, happy Mother's Day. I'm in a rather good mood today, so I feel like being honest with you guys. So truth be told, I have wanted to do a top X something like a list video, and the title of this video is top 8 games that I wish had a legacy treatment. And so I put some games together. I had some games, truth be told, we're gonna just be completely transparent, some of these games were on my list from day one a year and a half ago, and some of these games are ones that I just kind of came to me as I was looking through my shelves and kind of thinking about different types of games. Now let me explain the criterion that I kind of applied to most of these games, and I'm cheating with one of them. I'm totally cheating with one of them. But what I tried to stay away from are games that have a narrative campaign option. So, for example, it's not on this list, but for example, there's a game called Scythe by Stonemaier Games. It is a great game. I really enjoy it. I would love to have like a legacy version of Scythe. But Scythe has an expansion called The Rise of Fenris, which basically is a campaign mode of Scythe. So that's not going to be on the list because I feel like, well, there's an aspect of stringing games together through story and being able to make choices of how the next game is set up, and that's called kind of a campaign game. So I tried to stay away from those games all but for one, and I will apologize profusely when we get to it, but other than that, I tried to just go with games that obviously do not have a legacy treatment out there that you can go and buy, or games that have some type of a campaign mode where you can play. Might not be legacy, it might not be marking cards or stickering things and stuff. Just like Scythe, The Rise of Fenris, you don't do any of that. You don't mess up your game at all. But it does offer, as I said, a campaign mode. So let's kind of keep things moving along, and let's start off with my number 8. Oh, first of all, before we start doing any of that, I gotta just cut in and interject here just for you guys before we start. These games are in no particular order or fashion or category or anything like that. Number 8 and number 1 have no significance as far as this is one that I really want a legacy version and this is one that I don't want as much as the other one. These are simply just games that are sitting on my table right now, and so these are in no particular order. So let's jump back into it. Number 8 on this list is a cooperative police game, and it is called Police Precinct. Now, in Police Precinct, players are taking on the roles of police officers, sometimes detectives, where you have a board, and it's a cooperative game where you are managing your precinct. You're going to have like liquor store robberies to go and take care of. You're going to have gangs kind of growing. I don't think they call them gangs. I think they're called like thugs or something like that. They're going to be growing within your precinct that you're going to have to deal with. There are some event cards that will trigger some cool events like a high-speed chase, from a stolen car and things like that. My only problem with Police Precinct is really just kind of in the setup. The reason why it doesn't hit the table for me is the setup for it is very convoluted. It depends on what side of the map you're playing on, or if you're playing in detectives or police officers, or I don't even really remember. I just remember the setup is quite specific to player counts. But having said that, the legacy version would be awesome. So I think Police Precinct number 8 would be a great game to put some legacy elements as far as making your own character and stickering the board and having like permanent changes to your precinct. Maybe a building that you didn't save burned down, so now then you sticker over that building, and so it's no longer in play. Just things like that. I think Police Precinct would be a pretty good option, which is why it's on this list as number 8. Now, number 7 is a huge stretch. I kind of grabbed it just because I think it would be a cool idea, although myself, I have no clue how I would implement it. But it is an old game from the early 80s, maybe late 70s, something around that time period. This is the 4th edition. It's gone through many, many editions, and it is called Talisman, the Magical Quest game. So this is basically kind of like what D&D in a box was back then. Now D&D in a box is, well, Descent, and now it's Gloomhaven. Those are already campaign type, story type games. This is not. So I couldn't grab Gloomhaven. I grabbed Talisman instead. And I don't really know exactly what you would do here, but I feel like you could connect you could connect games together through like a story. Everyone would pick a character. You'd be able to give them a name and like level them up or put stickers on them. I think that Talisman for my number 7 would be a very interesting play, although I'm not really sure between you and me how it would be done, but I'm not a game designer, so that's not up to me. I'm just a YouTuber. Since I am a YouTuber, let's get on with my YouTube list, and we'll go on with number 6. My number 6 already has a pretty decent story thematic feel to it, but again, since this is talking about legacy treatments, I threw it on the list, and that is Dead of Winter. So Dead of Winter is basically The Walking Dead in a box. Dead of Winter is a zombie cooperative survival game. The game itself, I'm going to give it some props first. The game itself does a great job of providing some pretty good theme and some pretty good storytelling through what they call crossroad cards. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. I'm not going to explain it in this video. It's not really germane because I'd like to keep moving along. But Dead of Winter, I think, again, stringing games together, a series of, I like to come back to 10 because I think 10 is always good, although there are some legacy games that go up to like 14, or I recently finished Rise of Queensdale where some people have reported 25 games to finish that legacy game. You could get 10 games out of this and tie them together through things that happen, give players choices, things that they've done. You know, we did this, but we allowed this to collapse. People could die off. Like, there's some NPCs, characters that don't really have names or faces or anything like that, but they're just kind of part of your colony, community, ashram, social network, physical, geographical, social network. That's what we'll call it. And I just thought it would be a cool idea, again, to string some games together, 10 games together, telling a big overarching story. And within that story, there's like mini choices that the players get to make. They get to maybe upgrade their compound at the end of every game and make changes. Number 6, Dead of Winter would be cool. Dead of Winter Legacy. I would buy that. I would buy that off the shelf like that. Now, number 5 is one of the 3 games that I mentioned at the top of the video that was like, it's got to be on this list. It was on this list a year and a half ago, so it's on now. And so here's one of the 3 that just instantly came to my mind as I want to play this as a legacy game. This would be hella cool. So the game that we're talking about for number 5 is called Covert. Now, Covert is essentially a spy game where it's a competitive game. So this would be, unless if you totally change the structure of the game, this would be a first time not cooperative legacy game. Here, let me set it down. In Covert, it takes place during the 1950s, 60s, Cold War. You're a spy trying to find, Russian intel. Coming back to the idea of stringing games together. Right now, Covert is a great game. It sets up, you play it. There's no story. There's like literally no story to it. There's not even cards that you flip over like an event card that give the game a sense of story. There's no story in Covert. Still a great game, fun, crunchy game to think about strategy, dice placement. I highly, highly recommend Covert, but I also think that if there was a like Covert legacy, that would be awesome. Still think it would be a good idea. I think it would be a great idea, actually. It was one that hit my list a year and a half ago when I first thought of games that need legacies. And so that's Covert. Now, you remember at the top of the video when I said that I was going to kind of cheat in regards to the narrative and campaign idea and me trying not to put things like Scythe on this list? Well, here's where I'm going to apologize, but I'll try to explain it, and hopefully y'all just can forgive me. But I really enjoyed this game. My number 4 is Robinson Crusoe by Portal Games and Ignacy Cevicek. Robinson Crusoe, again, just like Dead of Winter, is a cooperative survival game. It is tough as nails. I've only beaten this game once, and even when we beat it, we were like, did we forget something? Like, how did we just win? Did we forget to make a roll? Did we forget to flip a card? So Robinson Crusoe does have a campaign play in one of the expansions. I forget the name of it. I'll probably have to put up a picture of something like Lost Cities or the Lost something. I do own it. I have not played it. However, I'm going to allow this on the list because the campaign version of Robinson Crusoe is a 5-game mini campaign where there are no legacy elements, there are no stickers, there's no drawing on the board, there's no getting rid of cards and adding in new cards. And so, and I know I said, like, even if it was a campaign, I wouldn't put it on the list. But I really enjoy Robinson Crusoe so much that I want a legacy game. And so I basically forego all of my criteria and put it on the list. So if you like Robinson Crusoe, and you do want a small, I think it's 5 games. Again, have not played it. It's on my shelf. It's one of those shelf of shame ordeals. I recommend picking up Robinson Crusoe and picking up the expansion so that you can play a 5-game little mini campaign where you're like searching for this doctor guy who went into the jungle and got lost or something like that. And so that is number 4, Robinson Crusoe Legacy. Number 3 on this list is very akin to Robinson Crusoe, which is why I put them next to each other, considering this game has no categorization as far as, you know, they're just in no specific order. And so I put these together just because they seem to kind of mix well together. Robinson Crusoe is a cooperative survival game on an island. And my number 3 is This War of Mine, which is a cooperative survival game in a town that is currently in civil war. You are hiding out in a, well, maybe I can see if you can get a little bit of this. You are currently hiding out, you and some other survivors are hiding out in a dilapidated, blown up house, trying to survive, trying to feed each other, trying to stay happy, trying to stay alive. With civil war going on and bombs going off in the streets and people coming in at night to steal from you, to steal people from you, to maybe even just hurt you and kill you. This is basically a very, very dark version of Robinson Crusoe. It's also very thematic. I must give the disclaimer that This War of Mine does present very, very heavy thematic themes of people that are trying to deal with the world falling apart and going into civil war. So This War of Mine is very thematically, deals with depression, deals with alcoholism, it deals with suicide. It has a lot of heavier themes for adults, and since this is a family show, I do like to put that out there when I talk about games. I personally love it. I think, again, if they could string some games together of This War of Mine and make a legacy version, that would, again, it's on my list. I would totally buy that, and I think that would be a great idea to tell one cohesive story about these survivors and about where you live, or where you're squatting, essentially, and what happens to them, and if you can ride out the Civil War until there is peace or something like that. That is great. That would be awesome. Caveat, probably not for everyone. I need to let all of the family people know This War of Mine for the adults. A lot of adult themes. My number 2 on this list, actually my number 2 and number 1 are the final 2 that had to be on this list. Like I said, they basically came on the list a year and a half ago when I first had the idea. And so number 2 and number 1 have been on my mind for a long time. And you're going to want to stick around for number 1 because I've got a lot to say about that. But for right now, we're at number 2, and this is a huge box. It's Formula D, which is essentially a racing game, right? So let's put it here. It's a racing game in which players are just racing, trying to take first place, second place, third place. There's really not anything I can explain about the theme. You guys know what racing is. You know, a racing game, you're rolling some dice. There are some mechanics as far as how you can shift up and shift down and try not to hit other cars and stuff as you're going incredibly at, fast speeds. But I think that this would be a cool game to play an entire race season where you could develop rivals between other players. So cards would, you'd write down your rivals with someone else or your friends with someone else. You could upgrade your car at the end of games based on how much money you would get, based on how well you placed. There would probably have to be some sort of a narrative or arbitrary catch-up mechanic, But people love that. It reminds me of, I think it's Off-Road. This is dating me. It's an old arcade where you're just driving trucks around and jumping and stuff, and you're racing. But at the end, you get to spend some money to like upgrade your truck, give you some more boosters, or make your tires, you know, be able to turn a little better or go faster, things like that. So this one, I wouldn't necessarily say Formula D is great for a narrative experience, but I think it would be great for a legacy experience in regards to naming your driver, getting sponsorships, stickering your car, stickering your board, upgrading your card, maybe upgrading your character, developing rivals between you and the other players, maps. Oh, maps, you could have different maps to go, you know, that would follow the season, the racing season, and you get points based on how well you do. And after 10 games or something like that, you would have the leaderboard would be, you would have the winner of the entire game. So it's not necessarily about winning every single race, although I guess it kind of is, but it would be about the experience of customization. So Formula D, not so much on a narrative trend that it is more of just the fun video game kind of experience of naming your character and doing all of those kind of video game stuff within a board game. So Formula D Legacy and like stickering things, or even like stuff that could happen to the board. You could sticker that would permanently be on the board for the rest of the game, or something permanently on your character or on your car. I think there's a lot of good ideas that I've just pitched to the internet. So number 2, Formula D. It was on this list a year and a half ago, and here it is right now. Let's get to my number 1. So before we get into my number 1, I have to give a disclaimer. I currently am, how to say this? I currently am working, or I am in development with doing this game as a legacy or a narrative or campaign game. At the time of recording this, we are in the very, very basic trial, just brainstorming aspect of it. But it's number 1 on my list. Not that the numbers have anything to do with it, but it's the one that I saved for the end because it's the one that I kind of want to talk the most about, since I do have a little bit of experience with the game and a little bit of brainstorming and sitting with guys talking about what the game could be, where it could go, what it could possibly offer players, and what kind of entertainment value that the game could offer as the game changes. I have been drafted on to the team to basically work through the narrative aspect, not necessarily the mechanical aspect with all the mechanisms and how they would change, how they would improve or just go away or anything like that. So my number 1 is a game called Flashpoint Fire Rescue. In Flashpoint Fire Rescue, this game that I have right here in front of me, you are working cooperatively as a fire team, trying to put out a fire in, depending on what map you play, a house, a duplex, a high-rise. If you buy expansions, there's some pretty cool ones as far as like a ship that catches fire, like a ship, meaning like a cruise liner. There's an airport one where an airplane catches fire on the tarmac. And what are the other maps? Said duplex. There's quite a few maps that you can play on. But regardless of the map, you and your friends are rushing in as firemen to try to put out the fire. Not necessarily put out the fire, but like save so many people, pets and animals and people, and to drag them out and to save them. That's kind of how you win the game. You can lose the game by having too many people die and get burned up in a fire. So you're working together on your turn. It is very, very much a pandemic sort of game. It's an action point allowance system. you're given like 4 actions, and how would you like to spend them? You can spend them by moving, you can spend them by doing this. You also have each character with a special ability, so you could, you know, as per my ability, I'm going to use an action to do this or that. I'm currently working through ideas of the narrative of Flashpoint to try to tie the games together. As I've said with pretty much every game that I've pulled out, is if there is a way, narratively speaking, to tie games together, that is what I have been kind of tasked to do with Flashpoint. And so I'm not going to really talk about it since it is in a developmental, early developmental stage, but it would have something to do with a story of a group of very, very close firefighters slash friends, hence the players at your table. You're all taking on roles of people that you really, they're coworkers, they're your friends, and each game is going to represent an arson, some type of an arsonist that is at large, and so you're kind of putting out fires wherever he strikes, and things happen along the way, and the final spot is going to be a huge surprise of where you will flip over a card as far as where the final fire shows up. And I think it's a pretty cool bookend to a story over the course of, again, I don't know how many games, but I like to defer to 10 games. I think 10 games is pretty good. So that's my final one, number 1, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. First of all, before I end this game, before I leave us, I recommend all of these games just as they are. So this is not to be indicative of these games are okay, but Legacy would be the only way to play it. Now, obviously, they're on this list because if they had a Legacy version, I would buy them. But every game on this list is a great game to just buy on its own. Like Covert. Covert's a game you set up, you play, and then you put it away. There's really nothing else. You have a winner, you have a loser. It's not cooperative at all. It's actually kind of a little on the cutthroat side. But these are all really great games to buy, even though, sadly, they don't have a Legacy version of them yet. That's where I'm going to leave us. We've gone 1 through 8 games that I wish had a Legacy version or were given a Legacy treatment. Once again, my name's Andrew Davidson. Thank you for joining me on this Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day. And I will see you all at the next video.